All right, now that we've transferred our pen and ink drawing onto our illustration board, the next step is to start applying the 4 techniques in pen and ink that we did earlier. These. So we had stippling, which was dots, hatching, lines, cross-hatching, lines that cross each other, and then scribbling. We're going to apply these techniques to our drawing. Now, if you've come up with another type of pen and ink technique that you think would work really well for you on your drawing, you can also incorporate that. But you must have a minimum of 2 different pen and ink techniques on this drawing. So as I'm looking at my drawing and my resource material over here, there are certain areas that might work better than others with techniques. So for example, on the fur that's coming up off of his nose here, I would do hatching, but like curved hatching. Now his actual nose itself, his snout, has tiny little bits of fur, so that might come back together better with a stippling. Okay, so starting here, I kept my initial drawing because that way I can practice on here, and once I've gotten good at what I think I'm going to do here, I can then transfer it to my actual pen and ink drawing. So I'm going to start with the stippling over onto this one. So we're going to start with his nose. The biggest thing I can say about this is one of the lightest areas in the entire drawing. We want to keep white. So in the very dark areas, I may go ahead and just trace his nose here and color in some of that black. So I'm coloring in the black area. And then I'm going to start stippling in this area. Now this area is pretty dark, so I'm going to do very close stippling, but it doesn't matter how close the stippling I get over here, it's still going to be lighter than this black area that I've colored in already. Okay, and then up in here, I can see there's a little bit more gray. Okay, and then it kind of goes out to white. So I'm going to keep this area white. So I feel like, yeah, I got the idea, so I can take this away, and now I'm going to apply that to my actual drawing. Notice I'm keeping my actual resource material right in front of me at all times because it's really important that I'm watching what I'm doing with that resource material at each time. So we'll start by, just as I said before, going to color this in with some black. Just that area of the nose that I can see that is pure black. And then this area I'm going to start stippling, but I'm going to start stippling it pretty heavily. Now, as you can see, stippling is going to take quite a while. This has a little bit more of a black area up here I can color in. And then we'll go along to this area. So now, as I come up here, remember we said there's that grayish area here, but it's not quite as deep. So I might not have as many stipples here, and then we're going to be really careful to keep some white. Now, I don't see a big black line around here, so I'm not going to come and trace my line around the nose. I'm going to be very aware that I'm not going to, so once I've traced my lines on here with the pencil, I didn't come back in and immediately draw over them with a pen, because there isn't a big black line there. So this might be all I'm going to do in this area to keep that white, because we want to keep some of that white. I want to go on to a different technique, so I would continue this as I went down onto the mouth here. I'd put in that line because there's definitely a black line there. and I would continue with my stippling in this area. But I want to go on to a different technique. So here we talked about putting in hatching. So now I'm going to change into, instead of stipples, I'm going to put in little lines. Now, little is the key here. Even up here where I'm seeing bigger lines, I'm going to make those bigger lines with lots of lines together and not, I don't want to, I'm going to come on here. What I don't want to do is come in and go, there's a line, because it makes it look like, almost like you're scribbling. There are places we can do that, maybe like here on the horns where there's a big line, but we want to start creating that darkness and texture with little lines. Okay, so where it's really dark, we're going to put them with a lot of lines together. And notice I'm always going in the direction of the fur, so these are starting to curve. Notice how it's getting lighter here, so I'm just going to do a few there. And I'm always following the same direction as the fur on this. Okay, so this is really dark here, so we're going to put more together, and this is kind of light, so I'm just going to put a few. And then I'm going to start building this up. So you're getting the feeling, and these would go this way then. I'm getting the feeling of that fur on his head, okay? So I did another one just so you can see what it looks like once you're starting to fill in more. So we have the stippling here, we have the hatching here. On the horns itself, I did some cross hatching to give it that really intense texture. There's areas that are just filled in with the eyes, okay? So that's how you're going to get started. You can see this a little closer up to get that stippling. But once again, one of the things that you have to make sure is leave some white areas wherever it's lighter. So I'm going to leave white areas here on the side of this. Over on here, there might just be a few little lines. And that's how we're going to start our pen and ink drawing.